What happens if an EV runs out of battery power while you're driving? Should you drive your truck in four-wheel drive mode full time during a storm? And do advanced safety features mean we can raise speed limits? We answer those questions and more next on Talking Cars. Hey, welcome back. I'm Keith Barry.
I'm Emily Thomas.
And I'm Alex Nizick.
And, we get some great questions to talkingcars@icloud.com. And we have so many of them in the hopper that we just want to get through some of them and answer your questions before it turns into, I'm thinking of buying the new 1999 Ford Explorer. So we're gonna answer these in a timely fashion, and sometimes that means an all questions episode. So that's what we're doing today. Isn't that great? This is exciting. So
it's great.
It's great.
Let's do it.
Our first question is from Kurt from Kansas City. And Kurt says, what happens if you're in an EV, an electric car, and you run out of power? Does roadside assistance have generators to charge you on the side of the road, or do you get towed to the nearest EV charger? Alex, you looked into this, right?
Yeah. So I don't really have great news, I suppose, for Kurt. Really, it's kind of the same thing as running out of fuel in an, engine internal combustion powered car. So, and really your only option is to get towed to the nearest charger. I did find that, more towards when EVs started becoming popular, like 2010, it started to pick up a little bit. AAA kind of ran a program where they had some trucks that had level 2 and even level 3 chargers on them, and they would come out to you and provide enough charge so you could get to the nearest charger. But so few people used it, and it just it wasn't a practical solution. So from what I found, that program phased out. So really your only option is to get towed to the nearest charger. And I think it isn't really that big of an issue because of the range anxiety that a lot of people have with EVs. Is it just kind of necessitates a little bit more planning than maybe if you're just going to hop in your gas powered car and take a road trip. So typically people, tend to scope out where the chargers are and plan their route accordingly. So I would suggest doing that, of course. And then if you do happen to run out of charge, getting a tow is really your best option.
Yeah, and you don't want to be stopped on the side of the road for that long anyways, because that's not safe. I mean, their goal is to get the car out of where there's danger, too. So.
Right, and if it was like wintertime, which I would think is the most susceptible, time of the year for this to happen, if the car is dead, you might not be able to run the heat or whatever. So it's not a great situation to get yourself in.
You ever gotten stuck in an EV on the side of the road? You ever overestimated capabilities?
I've come close, but I've thankfully not yet.
What about you, Emily?
Done that.
It hasn't happened to me, but partially because I'm so scared that it's going to happen that I plan very, very small trips. I have this fear of running out of juice that I'm just no, I'm going to either make sure that it never, ever happens, or I just don't even remotely get close.
Now,
that's what makes a plug-in hybrid so great.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Is you can drive around town in electric and then, make those long trips and not worry about it.
Yeah.
Do you keep your gas tanks always at 3/4 full? Or is it just EVs?
No, I live more dangerously with the gas tank. But with my first car, my parents, when I was in college, were always just they were you never let it get below half tank. They were just never. And they would freak out on me because they were what if you get stranded somewhere? And I'm I'm really not going that far. It's a gas station. I know where it's at, but it's probably a good thing to just be aware of.
I'll be interested to see, maybe as EVs become the norm more than they are now, maybe something like that AAA program becomes, it resurfaces. I don't know. As people kind of get over the range anxiety, chargers are, more out there. So they're just thinking about it less. So maybe that, makes an appearance in the future. But yeah, it'd be interesting.
The first time I ever drove an EV, this is back a while ago. It was the first Nissan Leaf. And that week I had agreed to be the designated driver for a friend's bachelorette party. And I knew exactly where everyone lived, where everyone had to go to. I charged it. I knew exactly what the mileage and the range was. And there was one extra seat in the car. And one of the friends said, well, can't you just drop me off on the way? And everyone was, everyone had had a nice night and was a little relaxed. And and I said, what? well, no, I can't. I literally can't. I don't have enough range
budget
in the
for
car.
that. Yeah.
And she started screaming at me. It's like what is wrong with you? You're going to leave me out here? I said, no, I can't. Like, otherwise we'll all get stranded. She said, can't you just go to a gas station? And I'm trying to explain to someone whose judgment might be a little bit impaired at 3 a.m. why I can't drive home. And it was that was my first memory of range anxiety. But here's hoping that becomes something of the past. So Barry has a question, no relation. Any idea how many miles the average windshield lasts before it becomes cracked? How cracked is too cracked to be safe, and when should it be replaced? Are windshields getting damaged more frequently, or am I just having a run of bad luck? You might be. So we looked into this a little bit, and we've gotten a lot of questions like this, and many of them are from owners of Kias and Subarus, and there are some class action lawsuits around particular models from Kia and Subaru with their windshields, and those manufacturers have agreed in certain cases to, at no charge, replace certain broken windshields. Now, those vehicles include the 2015 Subaru Outback and Legacy and the 2016 Outback and Legacy. They have an extended warranty on the windshield. Kia, some 2020 models, Kia admitted that the windshields were defective and that they'll just replace them as part of a goodwill campaign, even though they aren't included in the warranty. So we have seen some faulty windshields, and again, this is part of a settlement. They're not saying why, but they're saying that, yeah, there are some bad windshields out there. I grew up in a state where windshield coverage was comprehensive, and it was no deductible. And that's in Massachusetts, where I first started driving. And it was great. You broke your windshield, you just went and got it replaced. It was free. It wasn't free. You paid for it, but it wasn't. It was more of a time inconvenience than someone driving around with a broken windshield. And driving around with a broken windshield is a bad idea, right?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense too, to have it covered like that. I mean, a windshield's like your first line of defense against things on the road. So having it cracked or discouraging people from getting it replaced is certainly not a great thing.
Yeah, I imagine it affects your visibility too, depending on the location of the crack and how severe it is. So it's something you want to take care of quickly enough, and hopefully maybe you live in Massachusetts and you have comprehensive coverage. It makes it easier for you.
Oh, it's great. And everyone who grew up in the Boston area can still sing the jingle for Giant. They're no longer around, so I can say it because it's not promoting anyone. But for Giant Glass, who do you call when your windshield's busted? Anyhow, so before we move on, with all that money you save, if you live in Massachusetts and you just realized how much money you saved replacing windshields, maybe you want to donate some of that. Maybe feeling generous. Well, we wanted to take a moment to let you know about the Talking Cars donation program. If you're not aware, Consumer Reports, we're a nonprofit. That means the work that we do, it's funded by memberships and donations. We're not on here telling you, to buy mattresses and put in a promo code so we get paid. So if you're able to give, it helps us keep doing this work we do, including this show. So you can find more at cr.org/give-talking-cars. cr.org/give-talking-cars. And thanks to those who already have. We've got a lot of folks have pitched in a little bit, and it's really cool. So thanks so much. Feels like a nice little community of Talking Cars fans, and I hope we get to see each other soon someday. But now back on audience questions. Galena has a question. The 2022 Kia Carnival seating configuration shows that the second row seats can be turned to face the back of the vehicle. Well, this is an interesting concept. I wonder about its safety while going down the road. Could you tell us about how this impacts the safety of passengers in those seats? What about turning the seat, then using a car seat for a toddler that positions them to face the rear of the vehicle? Should seats always face the front of the vehicle? Or is this rear-facing configuration safe to use? Emily, I kind of see you taking a very deep breath before you answer this one, right?
Yeah. So I was really intrigued because I hadn't seen the press images of the second row turned around. I was like, wait, what?
And we have one too. You would have noticed.
Exactly. We have one. And I when I did car seat fits in them, I feel like I would have seen those pages. So that's kind of what I did first, Galena, is I checked the vehicle owner's manual for the Carnival, and I could not find any information in our manual about being able to turn the second row around, which kind of led me to question, okay, if it's not in the manual, can this really be done? And so I reached out to Kia, and one of their spokespersons told me that that is not a feature that's available for the US market. It's available elsewhere, but not in the US. So that being said, I think a few key things, right? If it's not there in your vehicle owner's manual telling you how to safely do it, and, with all the sort of precautions and disclaimers of what you need to bear in mind, don't do it. We've seen videos on YouTube of people that are like, hey, if you have a US model, this is how you can make your seats turn around. You take out these parts and, ta-da, it's all rear facing, which gave me a lot of anxiety. Some of the things that, come to mind in terms of the safety is we don't have a means of testing, doing occupant protection testing for vehicle seats that are rear facing in the US. That's not part of any of the regulatory standards. It's not part of any of the consumer information programs. So we wouldn't be able to tell you how safe that configuration is. When you're turning the seats around in that way, how does it impact the seat back integrity of the vehicle seats? Just there's a lot of different factors. How does it, affect the way that the occupant restraint system works, like the seat belts and the airbags and such. So there's a lot to it that you could really be compromising and jeopardizing your safety if you make changes to your vehicle that it's not intended for, and that, certainly impact the way that a passenger is able to sit in the vehicle and sit safely. That being said, also, in some of those videos, I did see people putting car seats on these vehicle seats that have been turned around. Yes. So car seat manuals have specific pages that tell you that you are not allowed to install your car seat on a vehicle seat that is facing the side or facing the back. And again, has to do with how the seats are designed, how the car seats are tested. There's no regulatory standard for testing car seats on rear-facing vehicle seats. And there was even one video where the person was like, hey, look, I found these car seats that let me do this because, look, it says that you can install them rear-facing and forward-facing. To clarify, that is talking about the orientation of the child's car seat, not your vehicle seat. So yes, you can install your child's car seat rear-facing and forward-facing if it is that type of car seat. If it's a convertible car seat, if it's an all-in-one car seat, you can install it in both orientations. It is not referring to the orientation of your vehicle seat. Vehicle seats should be forward-facing for all child seat installations. Making those kinds of modifications to your Carnival for the US, right, it would void your warranty with Kia. And it just opens up a can of worms of you just don't know the impact of these changes that you're making. You don't know all the unintended consequences that could come from it. It's just not worth it.
That makes me think, why would somebody even really want to do this? I understand, like you said, the novelty of it, right? Especially if it's a couple adults sitting back there or whatever, it might be kind of fun to face each other. But at least in the video that you're referencing, why would the person even want to have all these car seats facing like that? Any idea there?
For some of the ones that I saw, it just seemed like the people were having larger families and they going on long road trips. It might be a way to kind of keep the kids kind of engaged. They can see each other, talk to each other,
Gotcha.
Play together.
Okay. Being
a sibling of 4, I would think that would also make for a lot more opportunities for sibling fights on a really long trip.
You get a direct hit.
Yeah, you could throw stuff right at each other.
Yeah, exactly. It's direct lines of access.
I don't see, and I know that this has been these have been in cars since it's more popular in Europe and Asia, but this is it's sort of a popular feature in minivans, and cars have had swivel seats going way back. But I can't imagine wanting to sit like that. And seeing why see where you've already been when you can see where you're going.
Think about the old station wagons, right? They had
that's what I was going to say.
Those seats.
I remember sitting in one of those. A family member had one. In hindsight, knowing about
literal
car safety
hindsight.
now, that scares me so much. Sitting literally in the hatch, facing backwards.
So don't do it.
Don't do it. Please don't do it.
End of story.
From minivans to pickups, Luke from Lansdale, Pennsylvania says, I have a 2019 Nissan Frontier. During inclement weather, should I just use four-wheel drive to get moving or keep it on for my entire 35-mile commute, even when the road surface is clear? Alex, what should you do?
Yeah. So on a vehicle like this, on the 2019 Frontier, or any Frontier really, it has a, kind of traditional mechanical transfer case in it. And with a vehicle like this, you pretty much just don't want to use four-wheel drive, whether it's four-wheel high or low, on dry, hard pavement. So, on a dry road, you just don't want to do that because it can cause binding in the driveline, which could, harm it, and then also accelerates the tire wear and all these things. So for Luke, if the road gets clear and dry on your commute, I would suggest switching from four-wheel drive to two-wheel drive. Because you can only go in your Frontier 62 miles per hour maximum if you're in four-wheel drive. So you just don't want to get yourself in a situation where it's actually less safe to be speed capped at 62 miles per hour than just being able to drive normally.
Good advice. Chris has another question about safety. On my commute this morning, I twice saw deer about to cross the road. It didn't seem like they knew I was coming until about 30 feet away. Given that they barely heard my gas engine, when more people are driving electric or hydrogen cars, will there be more crashes involving deer? I think I can answer this one. I've done a little...
Our resident deer expert?
I've done a little deer research for CR. I don't know if there's video footage of that or if somehow it was miraculously erased from the internet. Well, the good...
I have it saved, don't worry.
there's good news and there's bad news for you and for deer. So the good news is that deer can hear a lot of stuff. So they can hear that wind noise and the road noise and the tire noise of your car creeping up on them. And deer are prey, so they're always looking out for something that could kill them. Unfortunately, they have competing priorities. And if they are hungry, if they're looking for a mate, also their eyes are really sensitive. So if there are lights shining in their eyes, it can make it really difficult for them to even be that aware of their surroundings. So that's why a deer might just stop in the middle of the road in front of you at night. So deer hearing the car isn't the problem. It's what the deer does afterwards. That is the problem. Is what I've been told by deer experts who I might be able to call dear friends. Jason from Newburgh, Indiana, moving right along, said, we just purchased a 2021 Chrysler Pacifica Hybrid. Other than a few road trips a year, daily driving will be used for short errands and 3 to 15-mile trips using only battery power. Is that type of driving with a plug-in hybrid considered severe duty? And severe duty is something that's referred to in owner's manuals, where it talks about if you're basically going to be making your engine work harder than the average driver. I assume the shorter trips would be easier with this type of powertrain compared to an internal combustion engine vehicle. With that in mind, do we need to adjust our maintenance schedule? Should I use a product like the Stabil or another fuel stabilizer when I fill up the tank, or drive on gas only for a few times a month? It's a frequent question we're getting. We have a lot of nervous plug-in hybrid drivers afraid they're going to wreck their engine by not using it. Alex, can we give them some advice?
Yeah, I love this question because Jason's right. This is a unique situation with a plug-in hybrid where, owners of these vehicles may go thousands of miles and the engine either never kicks on or it kicks on briefly in just certain situations. So definitely an interesting situation. I wouldn't call it severe duty, though, for this plug-in hybrid. Quite the opposite, especially if you're staying in that EV mode. It's actually quite light duty for this vehicle. So you don't really need to adjust the maintenance schedule per se. So digging into the Chrysler Pacifica Hybrid's owner's manual, they have the regular information there. Whereas if you're driving, over 10,000 miles, that's generally the oil change interval is 10,000 miles. But they also say, which is more applicable in this situation, is basically at a year. So after a year, regardless of mileage, you want to replace that oil. And that's because the oil ages over time, even though this vehicle uses synthetic. But also those short instances where the engine runs, moisture can build up in the oil, which can cause it to degrade. So basically, I would recommend stick to that yearly schedule. So even if you've gone 100 miles with the ICE on, still you want to change the oil. And the second part of the question with the fuel, this is interesting. I didn't actually know this ahead of time, so I looked into it. And thankfully, the engineers on this vehicle thought of this. And the Pacifica Hybrid has this mode that it will go into automatically. And it's called Fuel and Oil Refresh Mode. And when this happens, you will see a little message on your gauge cluster that it's in this mode. And basically, the car determines that, okay, the fuel has been sitting in the tank for X amount of time and it hasn't been used. I'm going to kick on the engine to use up some of that fuel and also move some oil around the engine to avoid any corrosion or anything like that. So if you are driving your vehicle, and from what I could gauge from people online, it's about 90 days, you might see this message kick on. And the engine will try to run through some of that fuel. And one way you can get it to go out of that mode is by adding fresh fuel to the vehicle and kind of refresh the fuel in there.
That's pretty clever, though.
It is clever. It's a nice solution. And the good thing is that Jason doesn't really have to worry about it too much. So other than making sure he changes the oil as far as the fuel goes, I don't think adding stable would hurt anything, but it's definitely not necessary per their recommendations.
So what does a fuel stabilizer do for those of us that might not know all the ins and outs of that?
I mean, I don't know the chemical, details of it offhand, but it basically just tries to prolong the life of the fuel, right? Okay. So, if a fuel's sitting in that tank for over a year or something like that, it tries to make it still, have some life in it.
So like at the middle of the quarantine when everyone was worried about their cars sitting in the driveway, that would have been a good time.
Yeah, and also small engines too, for things like if you have gas-powered snowblower, lawnmower, those things which now you're supposed to drain them at the end of the season. But if you have a couple of tanks of in your garage or in your shed of 5-gallon portable fuel tanks, you can throw some stabilizer in there to make sure that when you actually need it to run that generator or whatever, that the fuel hasn't degraded to the point where it's no good. One last question from Moshe, who says, I recently bought a 2018 Toyota Highlander. It is a host of safety features, including lane keeping assist, blind spot monitoring, adaptive cruise control, and much more. It got me thinking, as these things become more common, is it time to raise the speed limits on highways? Ooh.
No.
Emily, I think you might have an opinion here, or even a research-backed opinion here.
I do. Sorry, Moshe, it's not time to raise the speed limits on highways. So all those really great safety features that you're talking about are probably not available on most vehicles on the road. The most recent study by IHS Markit, which is like a market research firm, showed that the average age of vehicles on the road is 12.1 years. So as you can imagine, they don't have that host of safety features that you and Keith like to talk about. And really until the majority, or if not all the vehicles on the road have those, would we be able to really see like the, optimal and full benefit of them, right? Like working in concert together. They obviously do a lot right now for limiting crashes and limiting the severity of crashes, but you wouldn't want to be increasing the speed limits when not all the vehicles can respond that way. Also, we don't want to increase the speed limits, period, which I'm sure is going to be a real bummer for some of you. But increasing the speed limits tends to also drive up the behavior to drive even faster than the speed limit, which is just really risky. And in the past year with the pandemic, we thought that, okay, in the safety world, we thought that we would see fewer crashes because people weren't going to be on the road as much. However, even though the vehicle miles traveled decreased, the number of crashes and the number of fatalities actually increased, and increased by approximately 7%, which was surprising, right? And really it's because of three main behaviors. So you had a lot more impaired driving, a lot more speeding, and a lot more people not wearing their seatbelts. within those, the speeding related crashes increased by 11%. So people are not just adhering to the speed limit and being like, oh yeah, I'm going to just drive at this maximum. No, they're always exceeding that. So there's a lot of concerted efforts across the safety industry and even globally, like UN Global Road Safety Week had this whole campaign about bringing the speed limits down to 30 kilometers per hour or 20 miles per hour in the US in places where people in traffic mix. So like in your local towns, your cities, villages, things like that, to reduce speeding related crashes. So I think overall, it's not a good time. And I don't really know that there will be a good time to increase the speed limits because I don't think it's the safer thing to do. I think it's more dangerous. It tends to drive more dangerous driving behaviors, and it's unnecessary.
Adding to that sort of course, in addition to that, there is data showing that as states raise speed limits, that crashes and fatalities increase, and the difference between a crash at 65 and a crash at 85 is immense when it comes to survivability. Is that some of these systems, while they are great as sort of a training wheel or a last resort or a bumper or a guardian, someone to hold your hand if something potentially goes wrong, you cannot rely on these systems. And over-reliance on these systems can really, really lead you into a bad situation. They're there to keep you, an attentive, active driver, from making a mistake. But if you rely on them to drive the car for you, the technology is not there yet. Automatic emergency braking, I think a lot of people don't understand. Even highway speed automatic emergency braking doesn't guarantee you that it can stop the car. It says that it can maybe mitigate a crash from a higher speed by bring the vehicle speed down to a lower speed crash. But it's not going to prevent a crash. We're not in a world. There are no self-driving cars on the road today. And maybe someday when we have fully autonomous vehicles driving around, they can go on the highway at 200, 300 miles an hour. But, we already have these things called trains that can do that. And airplanes that are led by, they're conducted or piloted by highly trained folks with a great amount of technology and nobody else in the way of them. So with cars and traffic, no, this isn't it. But an important opportunity for us to get on our safety soapbox, right?
Yes.
Our very justifiable safety soapbox.
Everybody knows I like my safety soapbox. But there was a really interesting stat that I read in this IHS study that was released in 2019. And so one of the things that they said is that they found that a 5 mile per hour increase in the speed limit, or like in the maximum speed limit, was associated with an 8% increase in fatalities on interstates and highways. And I was like, that feels dramatic, right? Like you don't think much of it when you're just accelerating an additional 5 miles per hour. But for that to equate to an 8%, increase in the fatality rate, that's a lot. And it's unnecessary. Like I was saying before, it's unnecessary. We don't need to have the ability to be going so fast. It's like, as Keith said, the faster you're going, the greater the risk of injury and fatality at those severe crashes. You can't control a lot of that, but you can control where you're keeping your speed. And so bring it down, guys.
Yeah, you don't say
that number would have that number would have to be 0 or negative for it to be justifiable, right? Any increase there is just a non-starter for increasing it.
Yeah, and you're not saving that much time, even on a long road trip. And as my father always used to tell me, you get there a lot later if you have to go to the hospital first. So,
true. That's true.
That's protective.
Yeah, exactly. So, if you have any questions, and if you want to argue with us, if you want to argue with us, we love it. Send your questions to talkingcars@icloud.com. We'll try and answer them. We will answer them, and we'll might even just provide you with a different perspective. So, thanks so much. Hope to do another one of these All Questions episodes soon. And thanks for talking cars with us.